Welcome to the Urban Grown Stories, the companion podcast for the Urban Grown Tour hosted by Cultivate KC. You will hear from urban farmers, growers, and advocates across the Kansas City metro area, from the history of local food in KC to the challenges new farmers face and the impactful ways you can get involved in our local food system. This story collection will leave you inspired, informed, and hungry for change.
In this episode, we visit Manheim Gardens to hear from Nate. This is their story.
Hi, I'm Nate Madden. I'm the president, at least at this point, of Manheim Gardens. I am originally a farm kid from northern Iowa and found myself in Kansas City through a variety of factors. Definitely have found this place through it being pretty close to where I live. It's just a couple blocks away. As the pandemic was sort of winding down, I was like, man, I really want to go just meet some other gardeners. And, I grow in my own yard and stuff, and it's great. But I wanted to, get a little more plugged in. Isolation will tend to do that to people. And so I called KCCG and asked them who the point of contact was for Manheim Gardens, which was the closest one near to me. And they put me in touch with Steve Sacken, who met me here on a very cold, kind of miserable March day. I think it was March 7th, 2021. And he's kind of an eccentric figure, and he's one of our garden elders. I showed up, and he rides up in his bike. It was like sleeting. It was like 34 degrees. And he's got this bucket full of fermented corn, and he's like, come here, let me show you something. And then we go to the chicken pen over there, chicken run, and he starts throwing it out and watching all the chickens go to town on it. And he starts explaining to me how much they love the fermented corn. It's easier for them to digest. Maybe they even get a little drunk, who knows. He gave me the rundown of the garden, what everything was, sort of told me the same thing I tell anyone else who stops through, which is Sundays 10 to 2, we do our work days, and anyone's welcome. There's no membership. There's no formal sign up. It's, as I describe it, our little community here is an anarchic self-organizing system, and somehow it works. There'd been no formal organization to this until 2017, but starting in the late 90s, this was all abandoned, and that's when they came in and started clearing a bunch of noxious invasive plants, carving out little areas for the garden. It was very overgrown. And this is where, me, just as someone who's been here since 2021, I'm a little bit of the new guard, but the old guard will tell you about how a lot of this was just sort of a handshake deal with people who had owned the land, who didn't really have much. They were like, oh, you're going to keep it mowed, you're going to keep things pushed back? Great. Fine, you go to town and have at it. And so they did that for quite some time, and it went through ebbs and flows of like involvement and engagement. But in 2017 is when it formally got organized into Manheim Park Garden Conservatory. We've been working, and every year, even since I've been here, it just gets a little bit better. There's always like one more person who joins on, and sure, people move away or like, I'm doing something else with my life and time, but we do sort of have a nice solid core at any given time for the space. Some of the first things you notice are the high tunnel, or the hoop house as we call it, and that's where we're standing right now. And we grow a variety of different vegetables. Right now it's leafy greens season, but we'll transition it over to like tomatoes and everything. And we got a grant to build it, and we put it all together. You'll probably also notice a wood structure if you're walking up on the concrete driveway, which has something that looks like almost a little mud hut. It's actually a cob oven that we had built last year, and built a protective structure around it. And whenever we have an event, which is we at least have two major events during the year, our Spring Fling and our Harvest Fest. We fire that up, we make pizzas, breads, and it's just kind of a fun thing to get going. And a student from KCAI helped put it together. Sean Whalen is his name, and he helps manage repairs on it, and he says that he's committed to keeping it fixed up. You'll probably also see that like we have a bunch of plots staked out. We have a small, humble stage that is heavily trafficked. We have a chicken run. We have plots as you sort of go deeper, either north or south into the garden. I think one of the things we say constantly is meet us under the oak tree. We have a very large old pin oak, the little fire ring around it where people go gather. Half of volunteering here is basically just sitting around that and chit-chatting, wasting time. And I think that's part of the community aspect. We have a chicken committee. Again, I say anarchic, self-organizing system. This chicken committee sort of operates semi-autonomously. You know, they ask us for money to buy feed or whatever, but they sort of manage things on their own. Well, they definitely get treats every day. They're fed. I've noticed the chickens are a big draw, especially for the kids. And it's not just chickens. We do have turkeys and ducks in there. And so the kids will come in and, you know, they name them, they hang out with them, learn about how chickens are as a living thing rather than a drumstick on your plate. In previous years, we've had a pretty dedicated rotation system where we'd build out a temporary fence and they would, eat and peck at stuff, and obviously chickens fertilizing, just going about their daily business. And then we'd rotate it out next year, and that was all very well fertilized and everything. They definitely are part of that ecosystem of growing plants. I actually think we're probably 51% community and 49% garden, even though you come up here and see a growing space. There's a lot that's happening. One of our neighbors is here picking greens. Shout out to Kellen right now. And we have a lot of other things that happen at the garden other than the growing. The space and the growing is what brings people here, and the food, obviously. But we also host, we are wide open for community events. If you want to host something here, just reach out to us. I don't know in my time here that we've ever said no. We usually have an event on the solstice, not that we host, but we just have someone come in. It was they called themselves the Queertet last year. It was a quartet of stringed instruments, and they played as the sun was going down during the solstice. It was, by all accounts, gorgeous. They wanted to do another event here again this year. Last year, I think we had 5 different house music, rave, dance parties with lights and lots of noise and dancing. But the community is accepting of it. And yeah, kids, this is a very kid-friendly place. We've always maintained that. We guard that pretty heavily. We have put up that playground so that it's a welcoming space for children. We also, I think one of our biggest dreams, biggest plans is we actually own a house, a dilapidated house that's on the north side of the property on 42nd Street. And we have actually secured a fairly sizable donation and are starting work on revamping the house. So one thing we lack here at the garden is a permanent structure, a bathroom. We don't have a bathroom for people to use. It's literally meant that some volunteers are like, hey, I got to go. And, they don't come back. And also we want a place where we can have our meetings and just have a place of our own. It will have a living space in it eventually. So we would like to have a full-time garden steward who can live here, who can, as part of their activities or part of the garden activities, help organize and coordinate the work that we do here on a daily basis. We really are planning for the future while also knowing that we're a fully volunteer organization with a $12,000 a year budget. So we manage the best we can, but we also have a lot of dreams of what this place can be, because, and I think a lot of people have noticed this, if you want to go spend time in a space, you need to buy something. You need to do something. There's an action. We actually have none of that here. Come here and enjoy it. Come get some food as you walk away. We have no sort of barrier to entry, and so we want to keep that going, and we want to solidify that by having an actual physical space that people could come work at during the day. Maybe we'll have nice coffee. Maybe it's just a spot that has internet, that if you're just there to do your thing, similar to a library, it's a resource, and that's it. We ask nothing of you other than your respect for others in the space and the space itself, and to just be. We do weekly harvests during the growing season to give fresh, usually greens, but whatever's growing, to a food pantry that's right down the street there at Emmanuel Lutheran. We also encourage anyone who comes here in good faith and is a steward, anyone who comes here and seeks to understand how like food comes to be, to come take what like we always have more than what we can consume ourselves. And we want people to be involved and engaged in that process of like knowing what it takes to grow food. And I think that a lot of people, I don't know, there's an anxiety, I think, that comes from our disconnectedness overall to knowing the things that sustain us, that keep us alive. And once, and I'm not any different than anyone else. And like, once I feel that coming on, and it's the derivation of the saying, go touch grass, like literally get some dirt in your hands, go like eat some fresh spinach. It is actually truly real. Like, you will feel better. Go work like 4 hours in the sun and stay hydrated and wear your sunscreen. But like, you're gonna feel that type of good exhaustion at the end, not that like I'm hollowed out, I don't know why sort of exhaustion. We try and make it an entry point for people to just know a little more. If you have curiosity, if you want to understand a little bit and even try your hand at it, we have ways for you to get involved and not feel like it's all on you to know how to grow a 14 by 5 foot bed. That's a tall ask. So we'll have you paired with an experienced gardener so you can go do what you need to do and learn what you want to learn so you can grow on your own. And so we try and be an informal educational institution and access point. And I always say to new people when they come here, I try and find what is growing and have them harvest it before they will leave here, because I want them to know what it feels like to be like, I picked that, when they eat that eventually. So it's really important to get people down to that essential granular level of touching, feeling, smelling, tasting, engaging all the senses when it comes to your food. This was last year. We had a bunch of ground cherries and tomatillos growing, and with the ground cherries especially, and I wasn't that familiar. Someone had planted them, and like, this person comes up to me, they were like, is this safe to eat? I just saw it growing over there. And I'm like, well, yeah. And I was like, I think that's a ground cherry, but I wasn't sure, an experienced gardener like me. And so I just like asked the person who was managing the checkerboard plots, I was like, is this the ground cherry? And they were like, yeah. And so we both ate it, and we both had like a revelation of like, oh, wow, I've never tasted a flavor like that. Sweet, and then all of a sudden it transitioned into this weird savory thing. And like, it wasn't like, people describe it, their face lit up or whatever, but like, you could tell there were gears grinding and things turning, and it sort of, I think it had an impact on both of us, because I was like, wow, I'm going to make sure that I get some ground cherries, and make some salsas with it and incorporate it into my dining, because it was something I had traditionally left by. That person took a stronger ownership in like managing the checkerboard, which is a community space, and like, that's just the way it sort of starts. Is like, someone asked a question. They were literally concerned, because I think we're all told like, hey, berries, man, they might make you sick or something, and I appreciate them asking it, but like, they did their diligence, they asked a question and ate the food, and like, I think it changed their perspective because they keep showing up. One of the things that happens when we have peas is like, they're great and everyone's like, wow, they're really good to eat fresh. And then we pick a bunch of them and it's like, yeah, but if you want to have like a meal with these fresh peas, have fun shelling them, like, there's like a tedium, I think, that comes with this. And like, and that's just the way it is. Like, there's no way to change that. Like, when you're doing things by hand, this is not mechanized agriculture. This is not industrial agriculture. We're just doing it with our sort of own sweat and everything. And so the tedium, I think, is a lot more tolerable when you have other people to do it with. So when we're digging potatoes and it's hot and miserable, at least you're doing it with like a half a dozen other people. And when you pull like 250 pounds of potatoes out of the ground and you're like, did the rough math on that, that's like 80,000 calories, and like can sustain one human being for 2 whole months. It kind of blows your mind about like what you can do with a sort of collective effort like that. Yeah, it's an acre and some change. And I will say that whatever we yield here would crush the yields on a per acre basis of industrialized agriculture, because the land is tended to more meticulously. People are zoomed in way more than a tractor driving over spraying chemicals, which we don't do here. We're fully organic. So it's like we do better because there's more attention and intensiveness to it. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a farm kid, and that means I raised food in an industrial manner. And I think a lot of people assume a negative connotation. However, there's a lot of ground and a lot of people need to be fed, and there are ways to do it responsibly. And so we got to strike a balance with how do we do large scale agriculture to feed people and keep bellies full, while also ensuring that people have access points to have an honest relationship with their food. I think that's super important, because I think if you don't have an honest relationship with your food, like many things, you start to dissociate a little bit or be like, what and why? Or you might get super curious and be like, I need to know more. And we want to encourage that instinct, is I want to know more, and not have people be horrified, right? When they learn more, to be like, wow, that is super interesting. And then continue to go and learn more about this process. So I think creating access points is a big part of, for learning about this, is a big part of what I would like to see. Because, a farmer who could be, she might only have 80 acres, and they have a chicken tractor that they rotate out and all these different paddocks, and they have it organized super well. But that person, you can't just pick up one day and be like, I'm going to do that. It's the education that you need to have to know how to manage complex intermingling systems like that. Land is not cheap. Equipment is also not. The capital costs are super intensive. So it's actually pretty easy for people to be just steps and steps and miles removed from their food sources. So bringing people closer to that and closing that gap significantly, if completely, is, I think, the most important thing to do with food systems. And it would be great, actually, if there were more options and things available for people to learn about larger scale agriculture. I'm thinking of a garden member here, Dan Kroll, who he works at Powell Gardens and has been turning a lot of that into food forest, into sort of interweaving ecosystems and permaculture to grow food at scale on space that was just sort of sitting there blankly before and getting taken over by invasives. He has always been a very good educator and made it easy for people to do that or learn about that. So I think that's key from my perspective, is getting people the chance to have questions answered when they ask them. I think another part of this that I want to, and it's in our mission statement, and you'll see it on our website, manheimgardens.org, is that we are an inclusive green space where we cultivate relationships, people, plants, and food. And I'm getting a little choky about why that is. Along with those barriers to entry, just in terms of, it can be intimidating to learn about food and food systems and growing things. I think there are barriers that are placed from other systemic inequities in society, be it race, be it gender, be it location in the city, socioeconomic status, whatever the dimension is. There are barriers that we are indignant and angered about. And that is one of the reasons we keep our barriers to entry low, because that casts the widest net possible. So we are actively anti-racist. We are pro-trans, pro-LGBTQ. We are a space truly that if you come here and you come with respect and love and openness and curiosity, you will always be welcome. We're all a little awkward. We're all a little whatever here, but we all share that baseline. And we guard that very heavily, and we don't give an inch on inclusion and belonging here. And thinking of how things are in our country right now, we will never give up on that. They will have to come pry this garden from our cold dead hands if need be, because those values are so deeply entrenched in our core of being here. This is a place that is safe for all, and anyone who is deeply involved here knows and understands and feels that. And it's like almost an unwritten set of rules and a language that we share, and it's just something that's really meaningful to me. And I think oftentimes about how many fewer people I would know, how many less fun things I would have done, even outside of the garden, if I didn't come here and reach out to Steve in March of 2021. And the thought of that alternate reality is terrible. So I'm so glad that I chose to do this here now.
Food for thought. How can you help support your local food system? Start with buying local through CSAs or your local farmers market. Volunteer at your local growing space, cultivate your own food, or voice your support of urban growing to your elected officials. Visit cultivatekc.org/urban-grown-stories for more information. For more on the growing site featured in today's episode, please check the show notes. Thank you for listening to Urban Grown Stories, a podcast brought to you by Cultivate KC in partnership with KC BizCare. Urban Grown Stories is hosted and produced by Jessica Garcia, with interviews recorded and edited by Kara Harbstreet, a Kansas Local Food Fellow with K-State Research and Extension. Production and editing support from Eric Hemphill and Ami Freeberg, with intros provided by Cultivate KC staff. Keep growing, Kansas City!